Occasionally you may find that you've been handed a scan, you've scanned it yourself, you've purchased some relief artwork from, for example, the internet, or however you've come across, for example, a scene like this. There are occasions where you need to modify it or remove pieces from the actual scene. So in this demonstration, I'm going to take a look at how we can work with what we have within the scene we have in front of us. So for example, we're going to take a look at how we can reuse this tree down here again in this scene, how we can remove this deer for use later on. Now this can be an issue if you don't have your artwork already on separate layers and pre-saved for you. So in this demonstration we'll look at how we can go about doing this. So firstly, I'm going to start with this tree. Now I may want this tree stump to be used over and over again within my design. So to remove this, all I need to do is come to my create polylines and just draw a vector around it. I'm just going to draw some straight lines for now around the edge of it, as we can see my vector. So drawing vectors all the way around the edge of the line of the tree itself and closing it, so we can see, denoted from this blue line around there, that we have our tree. So we'll leave that as it is for now, and we'll do the same around this deer up the top, because we're going to reuse this deer. This time I'm going to use smooth polylines. You can see a difference on the arrow itself. On the crosshair there is an actual S line denoting that you're now using smooth polylines. So I'm going to quickly go around this deer. I don't need to be too precise. I'm going to use this piece and save it into my clipart library. So just clicking my way around to be slightly rough. Don't need to be too accurate with this. It's a very, very powerful tool. So let's take a look at what we firstly mentioned. We wanted this tree stump to be used over and over again in our design. So the first thing to do with this is to turn it into a piece of clip art. Currently it is a whole relief layer. It is one piece of this scene attached to it. Now if I have this vector selected and press the Ctrl T, we can see it's turned blue. This now means it's its own piece of clip art. Now I'm leaving the original piece where it is, but if I hold the Control key down and drag and let go, it's taken a copy of that piece for me. I can move this, I can scale this down slightly, and I can stick it, for example, in front of the other tree. Now if I take a look at this other tree, we can see how it interacts. It's currently behind that. I don't want this to be the case. I do want this to be sitting higher. So I'm going to change the height of this and actually make this sit above that. So I'm going to make that 8. And we can see it doesn't fully sit above this. So I'm going to change this. I'm going to make this 10 to above. Still not high enough, so we can see the changes happening quite frequently. So let's go to 14, and as we can see, it clearly sits in front of it, giving us that nice design. I still have the original piece of clip art fully there for me, as we can see it over on this side. Now I'm going to go back and select this piece. If they're blue, they are still active. I can move them around if I need to be by selecting on them. I'm going to hold the control key down and add another one, but this time I want it to be fallen over, so I'm going to rotate it slightly and scale it down. Now in this case it's not quite right, so I'm going to flatten it a little bit using this piece here, and I can also skew it, as you can see, by pulling this handle on this section. So I'm going to skew it so it's sitting more like this. Again, it just improves the look of it. Now I also have the option of pasting these in place as they are. So if I select this and hit enter, that will now be pasted into that layer. The same with this one, pasted into place. But I also have the option, if I have this selected and expand my tool settings transform dialog, of pasting to a new layer. If I paste this to a new layer, it will stay within my design, but it will be pasted within a new layer. The advantage to this is I can actually change the way that this interacts with each other. So if I come over to my project and pin that out, currently we can see that it is within an add mode, which is this piece here. If I turn the preview on, I can preview exactly which layer I'm working on. A very powerful tool. Now to clean this up, if I turn this to merge high, we will see that it will fit back within its original design. So you can see it started to merge in better. But it is on its own separate piece of clip art, so I can turn it off and turn it back on. I'm going to rename this to be tree trunk, and I'm going to leave that as it is. Now the next piece I said I was going to look at was this deer. I can do exactly the same from this. If I use the Control T, which is a shortcut for a cookie cutter, it then turns it into its piece of clip art. Like I said before, this piece of clip art you can duplicate, move around. I can do other things such as mirror, and I can place it in this part over here, and as we mentioned before, if I wanted to, I can make sure that this sits significantly higher than the other pieces, and I could paste this into place. So that piece is pasted into place. But again, I have the options of exactly what I said before, which was to paste this to a new layer. So if I paste this piece here to a new layer, I now have on a new layer my deer, my tree trunk, and on its existing layer was my first piece. So if I turn the tree trunk back on, this is now a piece of artwork that I could separate and use again. I'll do the exact same piece with the deer. I'm going to rename the deer to deer 1, and I'm just going to clean him up a little bit. So I'm just going to remove any of this step from around the edge. So I'm going to do this by using one of the automatic tools, the create vector boundary tool. I'm going to select a selected relief. This just allowed me to be slightly cruder when I was creating the vectors around the edge. Now you could obviously do this by being very accurate as you're going around, but in this case I wasn't too fussed because I was going to separate him off as it is. Now we can see we've got the vectors going around the deer quite nicely. So in this case what I'm going to do is select this bit here and remove the material from around the edge. If I turn my plane off, I will see there is some material between the legs here. So I'll remove that. As you can see, we've got a very nice deer. Now the advantage to this is I can add it to the clipart library. So I have my scenes layer here. So I'm going to drag my deer into this. And I'm going to do the same with my tree trunk. I'm going to drag this into this. This allows me to use this over and over again whenever I want to, just by dragging it back in, as we did with the live clip art within the scene itself. It allows me to just drag it, move it into various different places. The same with that deer. And I can do exactly the same processes which we previously did of just pasting them, manipulating them, move them into place as I choose. So we can see the very powerful tool of actually using this cookie cutter tool, this free transform, to move things around, manipulate any of your reliefs and remove them from pre-existing scenes. So again, a very nice powerful tool, quick and easy to use, to manipulate and create your artwork to however you see fit.